Now, detonate the reality bomb!
I will build a great, great wall.
Some alien race to come down and threaten us.
Is the singularity near?
The truth is out there.
The military-industrial complex.
The 7 mountains of the influencers of culture.
To be as gods, you know.
Change has come to America.
Catapult of propaganda.
From a secure location on top of the ridge in the heart of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, this is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
Yes, the coyotes are howling outside. The dachshund he's actually underneath the binky right in front of me tonight. This is a change. But I guess that means it's Sunday night, so it's time for A View from the Bunker Live. Welcome. Tonight we talk about this empty earth, the myth of overpopulation, these United Bankrupt States of America, fake hate crime, and what it says about our society, which is, as you know, quite sick. And Christian witches saying Jesus was a sorcerer. We'll deconstruct that. And we talk music and miracles tonight. Special guests, the Chrisagis brothers, Brian and Shawn, join us at the bottom of the hour in our interview segment. Thank you for letting us inside your ear holes tonight. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. February 24th, 2019 is the date. We thank you for listening wherever you might find us tonight, whether it's Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher.com, Spotify.com, or if you're listening at the little music player right there at vftb.net. Of course, the chat room is open. If you're listening at Spreaker.com, you can weigh in and interact with other listeners who are listening live. If you're listening, of course, in the archives, that's fine, too. That's fine, too. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify. You can subscribe and download the program automatically at any of those places. Or you just go directly to vftb.net because we've got links to all of those right there. And, of course, the easiest way to make sure you don't miss a program is download the free mobile app. It is an app that is mobile, and it's free. Yes. iTunes App Store or Google Play, and to make it simple for you, we've got the links to those stores right there at vftb.net. Of course, we also upload this to YouTube, youtube.com/Derek Gilbert, as long as we are still able, that is. And of course, on social media, we're at Facebook, View from the Bunker, Twitter, View from Bunker, or at Derek Gilbert, either one. I answer to both of those. Of course, we've also moved over to oneway.com, oneway.com, which is a Christian social media site. I like it a lot. The interface is sort of like a cross between Facebook and Twitter. Very clean, easy to navigate. You don't get bombarded with ads. And because it is run by a Christian, whose name just happens to be Derek, by the way. Not me, but another guy who knows how to spell it correctly, D-E-R-E-K. We don't get censored there. So oneway.com, look for me there at Derek P. Gilbert at oneway.com. The reason I bring up the topic of censorship on social media is that, once again, Josh Peck has been kicked off of YouTube. Josh Peck, who is the nicest young man that you would ever want to meet, is apparently too controversial for YouTube. Now, I don't know what he's doing right because, they haven't kicked me off yet, but then I'm not doing video. We're just putting the audio up there, and maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's sneaking under the radar. Maybe we don't get enough listens to make it worth their while to even bother censoring us. Josh's channel is he puts a lot of content together, and it's really remarkable that he's doing it right now. We'll talk about that in just a second. But anyway, we're playing in their playground. I've said this before, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google, they're allowing us to use those sites at no charge because we are creating the content that draws viewers to those sites to view their ads. It's a brilliant marketing scheme on the one hand because it's as a business model because they don't have to create the content. We create the content, but of course because we're not paying for the privilege of them hosting the content, they can decide without any warning to just kick us off. And that's what they've done to Josh Peck. Now, Josh is continuing to create content. In fact, he just uploaded an interview with our friend Dr. Michael Lake yesterday, Saturday. But he's doing this from temporary location in Tennessee, where Josh, Christina, and their family will be for about the next 8 weeks. If you're not aware yet, if you've not heard, Josh's son, Nathan, Josh and Christina's 5-year-old boy, Nathan, was diagnosed a couple of weeks ago with T-cell leukemia. And not all of their reports from the doctors have been really positive. They did a spinal tap last week and came back showing that there were some cancer cells in Nathan's brain. Now, he seems to be responding well to treatment so far, but prayer obviously is the key thing. You may not know that on top of all of this, Christina is very close to giving birth to their fourth child. Now, in an odd way, this may be part of God's design because they're already, and thank God they've got a midwife who seems to be really on the ball because she has already talked with them about using the cord blood, the umbilical cord blood from their soon-to-be second daughter, assuming it's a match with Nathan, to assist in Nathan's recovery. We'll know more this week, but pray for Josh, Christina, and especially for 5-year-old Nathan as he battles T-cell leukemia. And if you feel led to assist, to help them out financially, I mean, we know that you'll do it prayerfully, but if you can help them financially, you can do it directly at Josh's website. And I'll put a link in the notes. JoshPeckDisclosure.com is the website. Josh Peck Disclosure. There's a donate button in the top menu bar. And you hit that and you can donate with PayPal or credit card, whatever you prefer. But they do need your help. So some happier news this weekend. Sharon and I both reached milestones this week, and we celebrated with in our traditional way, which is with Victory Nachos. Victory Nachos. We used to eat nachos a lot. Sharon makes the best nachos in North America, bar none. And because Sharon is such a wonderful cook, there was a point not 2 years ago where I was pushing 240 pounds. Now I'm closer to, usually bounce around 195. So I've dropped about 35, 40 pounds over the last couple of years. Sharon, of course, you've seen her remarkable transformation since we moved here to the Ozarks. She has dropped over 100 pounds, but it's by giving up things with lots and lots of carbs in them. And that includes tortilla chips and breads and other things. But we celebrated today because this weekend, both of us achieved the milestone of turning in manuscripts for our next books. Sharon's next novel in the Red Wing Saga series, Realms of Fire. She gave me a copy of it. I get to read it first, which I will do as soon as tonight's program is over. Begin reading the next novel. This is number 5 in the Red Wing Saga series, Realms of Fire. I sent off my manuscript for my forthcoming book, Bad Moon Rising. The one-sentence elevator pitch is this: Islam is the spiritual equivalent of a supernatural corporate merger in response to the resurrection. That's the one. Now, there's some other stuff in there. In fact, there's a lot of stuff in there. Some things in there that I'm really happy to put into a book, and this will be out summertime. But it's off to the editor, so we'll see that in a couple of weeks as to what needs to be cleaned up a little bit. But I'm happy with it now. Both of us done with those. Time to move on to the next project and get back to a normal diet, which means more protein, fruit, vegetables, and fewer carbohydrates. The news this week, we'll just set aside the fighting over the wall for now, because that's just not ever going to stop. It's certainly going to wind up in the courts, as we discussed last week. There was an article that came out this week, actually a couple of news items that I think fit together well, because we're distracted by the political fighting that's taking place, and the talking heads on the news networks at night, Fox, MSNBC, CNN, aren't going to talk about this because it's not as sexy as should Trump be impeached, did he collude with the Russians, he and his supporters are racists, and that sort of thing. Because that riles up, it's the red meat that gets the bases on both sides of this fight really, really upset and angry. But there are bigger issues out there that will cause real change in the way you and I live and the way our children and our grandchildren will live in the years ahead. And we really need to pay attention to these. The politicians don't want us paying attention to these because there's some difficult decisions that need to be made, and they don't want to have to do it. They just want to keep kicking the can down the road. Put in their 40 years of working, make their fortune, retire somewhere comfortably, and leave someone else to clean up the mess. The problem is this. We've been sold this bill of goods that the Earth is approaching its carrying capacity, that overpopulation is a problem, and therefore we need to stop having children. I believe it's part of a bigger issue. The bigger issue is that we've been convinced that children are an inconvenience at best. And when you look at birth rates, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, especially in the technologically advanced world, North America, Western Europe, and Eastern Asia, Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, Singapore, Russia, etc., we just aren't having children at replacement rates. And yet we're still told overpopulation is a problem. Overpopulation, we're going to overheat we're overpopulation, too many children, too many people. But it's just not true. There's a new book that's been published by authors Daryl Bricker and John Ibbotson, Canadian authors, the book called Empty Planet, The Shock of Global Population Decline. Population decline. Like global warming, this is something that shouldn't even be, the two words shouldn't even be in the same sentence, global cooling and population decline. And yet both may well be true. We'll deal with global cooling some other time. These authors say that contrary to what we've been told, contrary to United Nations estimates, a growing number of demographers around the world, and demographers are guys whose job it is to look at these numbers, crunch the numbers, and try to project ahead what populations are going to look like in 20 years, 50 years, 100 years down the road. And contrary to what we've been told, which is that the world population will peak at about 11 billion in the year 2100, that more likely the global population will peak at around 9 billion. Right now we're over 7. We'll peak at about 9 billion sometime between 2040 and 2060. So sometime in the next 20 to 40 years, the world's population will decline or peak and begin to decline. And they write, once that decline begins, it will never end. Process that. Once human population peaks around the middle of this century and begins to decline, these guys argue it will never end. They call it the great defining event of the 21st century and one of the great defining events in human history. If they're correct, they are absolutely right. Now, they argue that this decline is mostly cultural. Here in the West, we've been convinced that children are an inconvenience. I don't want to have kids yet. I'm not done having fun. And so on. But it's more than just that. As societies become more modern, they write, more modern and urban, friends and coworkers replace siblings, parents, and uncles and aunts. We're no longer surrounded by family members anymore. We're surrounded by people we work with, people we hang out with. And while families will often put pressure on us, hey, when are you going to give me some grandkids? That kind of thing. When are you going to get married and settle down? Friends don't do that. Family members do, but we're not hanging around with family members anymore. Economically, this is going to be a nasty shock. Ideally, in our quasi-socialist society here in the United States, there should be about 6 workers for every retired person. 6 workers paying into Social Security, Medicare for every retiree. But by 2050, there will only be 3 workers for every retiree, and by the year 2100, it will drop to about 2. Japan is already in this situation. And it's tragic. There's a phenomenon taking place in Japan that's not often reported on, which is elderly women committing petty crimes so they get locked up. Because at least in jail, they've got a warm, dry place to sleep and 3 meals a day. They've outlived their family members, their spouses, or outlived their spouses anyway. Their family members don't hang around them anymore. And so they've got no other way to take care of themselves. Prisons, jails in Japan are becoming nursing homes. And here in the United States, we're heading down that path. Another consequence of this change in demographics, is that the population, as it ages, is moving closer and closer to insolvency. The Census Bureau has had to revise estimates of where the United States is going to be in 50 years from now, 100 years from now, because we're not having as many children as they assumed. The people who are immigrating into the United States aren't having as many children as they thought, and they're not entering as quickly as they thought now. The last 2 years here, 2017 and 2018, record low birth rates in the United States. 700,000 a year below the census projections from 2008. So the demographers are having to go back and revise their estimates. Now, why is this a problem? Because we're living longer. So the baby boomers, who didn't have as many children as their parents did, are going to live into, their retirement years, longer into their retirement years, and expect the same Social Security promises to be fulfilled to them that they paid for the previous generation. The problem is there aren't enough Gen Xers and millennials to keep paying for all of us baby boomers. I'm the tail end of the boom, who are going to live longer than they thought people would live when they set up Social Security back in the 1930s. And right now, even though the government or the official statistics tell us that the federal deficit is about $22 trillion, which is huge, and much of that blew up since the turn of this century. George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and now even under Donald Trump, the deficit continues to climb. The official number is $22 trillion, but it's actually much worse than that because of the unfunded liabilities, mostly Social Security and Medicare. That's an additional $49 trillion on top of the 22 that we're told about. $49 trillion with a T. The annual gross domestic product here in the United States, which, by the way, that number includes government spending, which makes no sense, is what, about $17 trillion? In other words, the United States is broke, and because the number of taxpayers, because people of working age is going to contract, we got a problem. But we're not going to hear politicians talk about that because we're too busy arguing who gets to use which bathroom. So, anyway, I bring this to you not to scare you, but because you're not going to hear it on Fox News, MSNBC, or CNN. A bit of good news, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Trump administration, has decided to cut funding to Planned Parenthood, Title X family planning funding. It's about $60 million in federal funds that'll be withdrawn from Planned Parenthood because of the rule change. The changes revert to the 1988 standard under the Reagan administration. It disqualifies family planning organizations from getting Title X funds if abortions are performed in the same building where contraceptives and other family planning services are offered. Abortion providers either have to divide their services into two separate buildings or lose funding. Again, this could cut about $60 million in federal funds from Planned Parenthood. Oddly enough, a couple in Idaho, and again, this is just sort of an example of how sick our society has become. A couple in Idaho suing Planned Parenthood for about $765,000 because the RU-486 abortion pill didn't work the way it was supposed to. Their son is now 2 years old. He was born after the drug-induced abortion failed. And so the couple wants $765,000 in compensation, as well as damages to alleged breach of contract, unfair trade practices, and emotional distress. There's more to this story, but again, think about this. They had 2 children already. They didn't want a third. Took the pill that should have aborted the unborn child. It didn't. The child is born now with a higher risk of birth defects because of the drug that was administered. And now the parents have filed a lawsuit against Planned Parenthood. And when this child, just think about this. If you're 2 years old when this happens, he doesn't know what's going on right now, this little boy. But someday, it's likely, because nothing gets erased from the internet ever, he will likely find out what his parents tried to do. And when he hits 18, likely sue them for the emotional distress of knowing that his parents tried to kill him when he was in the womb. Another interesting note, a friend of Bill's, that would be Bill Clinton, Jeffrey Epstein, cut a plea deal some years back for transporting minor girls for the purpose of having sex with them. He was offered a deal. And last week, Thursday, this past week, a U.S. district judge ruled that federal prosecutors signed the plea agreement illegally and then hid this deal from the more than 2 dozen underage victims of Epstein's sexual abuse. Epstein used paid employees of his company to find and bring minor girls to him. This was in the judgment issued by U.S. District Judge Kenneth Mara of Palm Beach County, Florida. Epstein worked in concert with others to obtain minors not only for his own gratification, but for the gratification of others. There's some pretty big names who traveled with Epstein on his private jet. Interesting detail, though, this 2008 plea deal that he reached with then Miami U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta. Acosta is now President Donald Trump's Secretary of Labor. Yes, our society is indeed quite sick. One of the stories that's kept cable news networks busy over the last week or so is the story of Jesse Smollett. He's the actor from the Fox News, or the Fox television network series Empire. You've heard the story. He's the guy who faked his hate crime against himself. It's also come out now that not only did he fake the hate crime against himself, he did so after an alleged racist letter, threatening letter, that was delivered to the television production studio where he works, didn't get enough attention. And it's come out, according to law enforcement in Chicago, that Smollett wrote that letter, or created that letter. You know, the way you always see it on TV, with letters cut out from magazines and pasted onto or something like that. Anyway, that didn't get enough attention, so he got these 2 Nigerian brothers to stage the attack against him. Well, Thursday morning, Smollett surrendered to authorities. He's been charged with 1 count of felony disorderly conduct for filing a false police report. And of course, depending on which side of the aisle you're on, commentators either criticized Smollett or tried to say, well, what he did was wrong, but it's only because of the climate in which we live, because of these hateful MAGA hat-wearing Trump supporters. You know, it is... I think the only way to characterize what he did, first of all, is emotionally and or mentally unbalanced, driven perhaps by a desire for fame and fortune that twisted his sense of reality. There's no way to defend what he did. Trying to defend what he did by saying, well, this kind of thing just shows how, deeply seated or deeply rooted racism is in the United States. I think it shows exactly the opposite, to be honest with you. In fact, I wish I'd thought of this a week ago, but credit to Jonah Goldberg, who's a columnist for National Review, for pointing this out. In societies that are truly oppressive, you don't fake hate crimes because there's no point. Now think about that. In a society that is truly oppressive, you would not dare fake a hate crime because there would be no point. Imagine, for example, a Jew in 1930s Germany under the Hitler regime faking a hate crime against himself and reporting it to an officer of the, SS? You can just see the German officer's response. Yes, and? The mere fact that we are seeing things like this, hate crimes being faked in order to claim victimhood, is itself an indication that things aren't as bad in these United States as those who would, as progressives would like to claim they are. And people only get away with it because we're a society now where you can get away with it. We're not an oppressive society. On the contrary, we've actually gone to the extreme in the other direction, to where we reward victimhood, which actually convinces people, like Jesse Smollett, sadly, to do things like this because they feel they can get away with it and be rewarded for it. As I said on Skywatch TV this week talking about this, pray for Jesse Smollett, because really this indicates a state state of mind that really needs something. And as Christians, we can identify what that is. It's the same thing all of us need, which is Jesus Christ. So pray for him that he would go to this extent and think that somehow that this was going to work out in his favor. Especially in a city like Chicago, where you've got CCTV cameras everywhere. That's how he got caught, by the way. Cameras everywhere. Spotted inconsistent details in his story, like, after enduring this, what was described in a lot of media as a brutal attack, he was still holding the sandwich that he just bought at the Subway restaurant. He endured a brutal attack, allegedly, as it was described by the media, and yet he didn't drop his sandwich. And during the attack, while he was reportedly being beaten and poured and doused with bleach, was able to call his manager, according to the story he initially told police. So anyway, the fact that he thought he could get away with it speaks to his emotional and mental state, his spiritual state. So pray for this young man. He's got a long life ahead of him. And sadly, this may be what he's remembered for a very long time. And by the way, just to give you another example of where we are in this country right now, and all we can do, instead of getting angry about it, because that's what the enemy wants. And by the enemy, I mean the principalities and powers, the rulers of this cosmic darkness, cosmic rulers of this present darkness. Literal evil intelligences in the spirit realm who want to destroy us all by keeping us fighting with one another. The Trump administration this past week announced a global campaign to encourage other nations and even pressure other nations to decriminalize homosexuality. Now, one of the main targets of this campaign is Iran. It's part of our foreign policy against the Islamic State there, where homosexuality has been illegal since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. But LGBTQ activists aren't having any of this. A columnist for Out Magazine said that, this is just an old racist tactic. The Trump administration is trying to convince other nations to decriminalize homosexuality, and homosexual activists, same-sex activists, are saying, no, this is a page of the old colonialist handbook. It's paternalist. It's white men saving. It's a variation of the old theme of white men justifying invading other countries by saving brown women from brown men. In this case, saving brown men from other brown men, I guess. I'm convinced that if Donald Trump issued a press release stating his support for oxygen, that he was all in favor of breathing oxygen, there would be some who would just put plastic bags over their heads just to make a point. And finally, Christian witches planning their first conference in Salem, Massachusetts, of course, site of the infamous witch trials. The so-called Reverend Valerie Love and self-described prophet Calvin Witcher says it's his real name, are planning their conference in April. They claim that Jesus was a sorcerer and the Bible is really a book of magic. Do I really need to go into detail as to where they miss on this one? I mean, look, if you're not going to take the Bible's condemnation of witchcraft and sorcery seriously, if you're just going to skip over that stuff and read, that as what, allegorical, then why would you believe anything in the Bible? Why would you call yourself a Christian witch? Well, it's not logical. But again, this is just a deception thrown out there to lure some people away who are turned off by the way some others present themselves as Christians. So anyway, Jesus was not a sorcerer. The Bible is not a book of magic. If anything, it's exactly the opposite. Jesus was very clear, because Jesus, part of the Trinity, is God, is the Holy Spirit, when he gave the law to Moses on Sinai. Don't do it, because we humans are not adequately equipped to discern in the spirit realm. We get overwhelmed when we see these entities that present themselves as angels of light. And we assume that the bad guys are the good guys because they're purdy. Pray for these folks, too, because anyone who presumes to teach or preach, according to the Bible, Book of James, is held to a higher standard and will be held accountable for leading others astray. So, Ms. Love, Mr. Witcher, pray for them that they see the truth. Well, coming up, we are going to talk about miracles and also music. A couple of young men who shouldn't even be alive, but they are our guest tonight. Brian and Shawn Chrisagis, the Chrisagis brothers. Full-time music ministry and walking miracles. Straight ahead on A View from the Bunker.
For thousands of years, the world has heard warning that there is a coming day when the man of sin, the Antichrist, will arise to pilot the greatest deception in human history. Prepare yourself now for what is ahead with the coming Third Temple Collection. This incredible assortment features Dr. Thomas Horn's new book, The Rabbis, Donald Trump, and the Top Secret Plan to Build the Third Temple, where you'll learn why many believe President Trump is a King Cyrus-like figure, guided by Hashem, God himself. The connection between Donald Trump, rabbis, and a behind-the-scenes scheme to erect the Third Temple, and how this, as the book of Daniel prophesied, will be the catalyst that precedes the apocalypse and arrival of Antichrist. All this and so much more. This unbelievable collection also includes best-selling author Carl Gallups' brand new book, The Rabbi, The Secret Message and the Identity of Messiah, which reveals how Israel's most venerated Orthodox rabbi, Yitzhak Kaduri, came face-to-face with the true Messiah and said that it was Jesus Christ. You may know that much of the story, but now you can learn what's happened since. Discover the secrets, witness tampering, intimidation tactics, global media, and powerful personalities who will stop at nothing, including death threats and even ritualistic curses to cover up this new stunning revelation. But we're just getting started. The coming Third Temple Collection also includes Shelley Neese's new book, The Copper Scroll Project, that highlights the decades-long quest to uncover Qumran's greatest secrets, the lost treasures of the Jerusalem Temple. Hold on to your hats as you'll also discover how the Dead Sea Scrolls were merely the tip of the archaeological iceberg as Jim Barfield's Copper Scroll Project tethers to Israel's modern battle for the Temple Mount, and how the secrets contained in the Copper Scroll, the most enigmatic of the Dead Sea Scrolls, might hold the key to one of the greatest treasures in Israel's history. But that's not all. You'll also receive the best of the first annual Blessed Hope Prophecy Conference on DVD. This 2-disc DVD collection is jam-packed with over 11 hours of mind-boggling revelations from presenters like Dr. Thomas Horn on deep state saboteurs and the secret destiny of America, Sharon Gilbert on the return of the ancients through pharmakia, necromancy, and virtual reality, Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis on the inside war against President Trump by elite secret societies, and unforgettable presentations from celebrated theologian Dr. Michael Lake, Derek P. Gilbert, Josh Peck, and more. Also included in this amazing collection, the original 4-week investigative Skywatch television series regarding the coming Third Temple on DVD, featuring Carl Gallups, Shelley Neese, and Dr. Thomas Horn. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of $180. Yours now for your donation of only $30 plus shipping and handling. Now's your chance to save big. The coming Third Temple Collection, available now at SkyWatch TV Store. Order online or call 844-750-4985.
Driving the internet to think. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Coming up at the end of, our final segment tonight, we'll reveal the newest Olympic sport. You'll never guess what that is. It'll make you shake your head. Yes, you will SMH. Our guest tonight, and this is really an honor, these young men, in fact, it was almost 1 year ago today that Sharon and I were first introduced to these young men. In fact, they introduced themselves to us. We were down at Morningside Church, there to see our good friend Carl Gallups as he was, I believe, maybe it was Jensen Franklin. Anyway, we were down there to just to watch one of the programs. These two young men came up to introduce themselves to us. They were... Well, let's just say they weren't dressed like they lived in the Ozarks. So we were surprised that they even knew who we were. The story is really remarkable, though. These are identical twins who should not have been born. Doctors said they should not have been born. They weren't expected to survive. Their mother was not expected to survive. They were born 3 months premature. They spent 2 years in incubators and then 5 more years essentially confined to the home. Inside the house because of life-threatening allergies to the sun, grass, clothing, all types of food. Their diet consisted of sardines, peanut butter, rice cakes, and soy milk. And yet, God had worked a miracle. And now they're in full-time music ministry. We will talk about that and some of the exciting things ahead for the Chrisagis brothers. We welcome Brian and Shawn to the program. You can follow them online at ChrisagisBrothersMinistries.org. Brian, Shawn, thank you for joining us tonight on A View from the Bunker.
Oh, thanks you, Derek. Honestly, we're huge fans of yours and Sharon's, and we were so honored to meet you that day when we saw you at the other table. We were like, oh my gosh, it's them. So we'll have to run over and tell you what a great job you guys are doing for the Lord, and we're cheering you on, but we love listening to you.
Well, I'm honored. You're too kind. And again, it surprises me because, you know, we're just kind of toiling away here in the Ozarks, and it's not like my career in secular radio, where there was a time when I was world famous in Peoria, where I'd go to the mall. Yeah, I was doing top 40 radio, and when you're the night jock in a top 40 station, all the 14-year-old girls know who you are, so you can't go to the mall without.
Well, you're famous in heaven and to the people of God, but you're also famous in hell because the devil hates you. You're doing a great job for the Lord.
Well, we'll take that as high praise. Well, brothers, you fellas are out there doing some remarkable work as well. Gifted musicians, but according to the medical experts at the time you were born, you guys shouldn't even be walking around right now. Tell us the story. What was it? What obstacles did you all have to overcome, or what obstacles did God help you to overcome that allowed you to even be here talking with me tonight?
Well, first off, our mom had rheumatic fever as a child at the age of 3. And she was an amazing woman of God, but she had rheumatic fever, and the doctors told her that she shouldn't have children because it scarred up the valves of her heart, and that being pregnant would probably be bad for her and the baby, that she would lose the baby or she would die in the process. So as she grew up, the one thing she always wanted was to get married and have children. And her parents were worried about that, and they were raised Catholic. She was raised Catholic, and so they always prayed and prayed for a miracle on her. They lit the candles, they said the novenas, they did everything they could, and they took her to the hospital all the time. And she was really watched by the doctors. But she decided that she wanted to marry this man named John Chrisagis. And when she was marrying him, her parents made it very clear to him that they should not have children because they didn't want her to die or something to happen to the children. Actually, she needed a heart transplant. The doctors didn't do it at that time, but the doctors kept saying she needs a heart transplant. There's no way she could live. And after that, they were married for 1 year, and she really wanted to have children. That was her whole goal in life. And she went to her parents and she said, Mom and Dad, if I can't have children, I really don't know. My life would not be worth anything because I really want to be a mother. And she said, I really believe God wants me to have children. So they consented, and she had one child, and she named him Anthony. And through that, she had more scarring, more problems. But she really wanted 3 sons because she was an only child. Never wanted Anthony to be an only child. But Anthony was her life, and she just was the best mother there ever was. And 3 years later, she really believes God led her to have more children. And 3 years later, when that happened, she had conceived twins. And the doctors were like irate because she was only 98 pounds. She was a tiny little 5'6" foot woman, and very feminine, very dainty, and beautiful. But what happened was she had us. She couldn't carry us full term, and when she had us, we were premature, 3 months. And we started, when she had us, we looked like E.T. I mean, Anthony looked like Elvis Presley, such beautiful hair, beautiful face. And then here we are, and it looked like E.T. Call home, you know. And the doctors wondered what happened because we were breaking out. We were turning green and purple, and they rushed us away from her because they didn't know what was going on. And they took us into the other room. They started hurrying up, trying to figure out what was going on, and they had to rush us to Children's Hospital. And she went with us, and they found out we were allergic to everything. We were allergic to the sun, the grass, you name it, every kind of food, every kind of light, the lights in the house, the rooms. The doctors never saw anything like it. We were allergic to every kind of food, every kind of clothing. I mean, how cute are 2 ETs naked, little babies. But they did tests, and they flew them all over from Canada to France to Italy, and they found out that we really were very special, but they didn't think we were going to live past that year. And they told our mom after a while that we were in incubators for 2 years of our life, and our dad worked very hard to keep the finances coming so we could be examined and tested. And they would take us back and forth, but they had to keep us inside at all times and covered. And when they, the doctors would keep having them take them to the hospital, we stayed there for such a long time that by the end of the whole 2 years, the doctor said, Margie, there's nothing we can do. These boys are going to die, and take them home. And our grandmother and grandfather was taking care of Anthony, but our mom really believed God brought us into her life for a reason, and she didn't believe that God was going to take us out. So there was a Christian cousin of hers that gave her a book of Lester Summerall, and the book was I Will Live and Not Die and Proclaim the Glory of the Lord. And it changed her world. And she said to the doctors, they will live, doctor, and they will proclaim, and they will not die, and they will proclaim the glory of the Lord. And she took us home. And that our dad had to sill in the windows of the house because the sun would instantly kill us. But we lived like that for 5 more years. Yeah. Did you want to say something? Because I want to keep talking without.
No. I mean, but I mean, that's hard to imagine how that would be. I mean, I'm 57, but I can remember 50 years ago when I was, second grade or whatever, or being outside on the playground all the time. I mean, it was just part of the daily routine, especially in the summer. We'd go out in the morning, take your ball glove and a ball, and we'd go play until it was almost dark, and then come home, and and I wasn't an athlete or anything like that. I mean, my favorite time was really spending just time in my room with a book, but still, getting outside, getting and getting into here, and just not being able to do it.
Behind you because we're 51 years old. So
okay,
yeah. So it's you and us were raised in that same time period,
right.
So yeah, and we wanted to do all that stuff. We just did. Our brother Anthony could run and everything, but we were not allowed to go outside. So it was very hard for us to understand the difference between what he could do and what we could do. And we couldn't be in a lot of lighting either because the lights were allergic to the lights. If we held an egg in our hand, the shell alone would poison our bloodstream and we would die. So it was very hard. But our mom always said, if you take the acronyms of family, FAMILY, it stood for Forget About Me, I Love You. And she lived that every day. We became her obsession, basically, because she really was the best mother there ever was. And we never felt strange in that house all that time, and she really took care of us and Anthony, but she really wanted the best for us. Well, what happened was our dad worked 3 jobs just to keep us going, and by the end of those years, our mom was really sick. She was in a wheelchair on oxygen, and our grandmother had to do everything, take care of us and her and Anthony, and it was just a hard time. And what happened was she went to a chiropractor. His name was Dr. Long. And I'm really cutting this story down so I can get to the part of healing. But he told her about being born again, and he said, Margie, did you know that the Lord came to set the captives free, and he died for your sins, and he died on that cross so he could take the sickness, death, and disease off of you? And she never heard anyone preach like that. And he says, Margie, let's receive Jesus today. So she prayed with him. He received Jesus, and then she received Jesus, and then she said, Doctor, I want my sons to live. And he says, well, there's going to be a wonderful man named Father Michael Scanlon. He's a Franciscan priest who started the charismatic renewal, and it was going all over the world, actually. Father Scanlon was one of the big men, and so was Francis McNutt, and they were going to be preaching at the Full Gospel Businessmen's meeting. And he said, Margie, you should go. And she said, but I can't take my kids. He said, no, but you need a miracle, and you can go for your kids. So she went in a wheelchair with her dad, and Father Scanlon's preaching up a storm and saying about breaking the bloodline curse and receiving Jesus. No, real fast though, Derek, think about this. She was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
God knew that he had to get a Catholic priest who was Spirit-filled to get her more on fire for the Lord and for her miracle, because she wouldn't just receive from anybody, but he had a Spirit-filled priest speaking on miracles and deliverance and healings and breaking generational curses. Now it's like God's timing is so perfect.
So she went down. She received a miracle, but how quickly did things change for her and for you then after that?
Well, what happened was he was calling down for prayer, and she went down in a wheelchair. Now everyone else is sitting there, but she was the fastest, like the woman with the hem that went for the issue. She had the issue of blood and went for the hem of the Lord's garment. She went down and she said, Father, please pray for my kids. They're dying, and I want them to live life to its fullest. I've lived my life, and I know God's busy, and he doesn't have time to heal us all. And he says, wait a minute, Margie, that's wrong. That's thinking. God is never too busy for anyone, and he's going to heal you tonight, and then I'm going to teach you how to pray with your kids. So he broke it off of her. He spoke over her heart and asked the Lord to just breathed life into her, and also he broke the generational curse. She was instantly healed. He took the oxygen off. She started running around this place, and she looked around for our dad, and our dad had passed out. He could not believe what he saw.
Wow.
So she put him in the wheelchair, and she said, John, we're going to go home and pray over our boys. And she went home, and so did he. They held hands and they prayed over us, and and our grandparents were there, and Anthony was there, and they all broke the generational curse of sickness over our lives. They sent it out the door, and when she opened the door, that was the first time we were ever near the door, and she felt the Spirit push us onto the Spirit came out of us and pushed her onto the floor, and we were set free instantly, and it was a total miracle.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I was raised in very liturgical denominations where we didn't talk about the spirit or curses or demons or anything like that. So, I mean, this is something that I've come to late in life. There are too many rational people I've met who have had experiences similar to what you described for me to discount them. But still, when I hear stories like this, it's like, it's tough to process. I mean, how do the doctors miss something like that? How do they not see that this was even possible? But like I said, I've met too many rational, functional people who have stories like yours.
I think it's because the Lord uses the ones like our mother who don't. She really didn't think it out. She just had childlike faith for this to happen. And even our dad, he started thinking about it, and he said, you're going to kill them, because the very first thing she said was, after we were healed, she knew we were healed, and she said, we're going to take them out for whatever they want to eat. And she would say, what do you want to eat? And we actually said hot fudge sundaes, because we had never tried them. We always heard how good they were. So she took us out, and our dad said, you're going to kill them. You can't. And she says, no, I'm trusting the Lord. She just had that. There was some kind of level that she went with God, and everybody who knew her over the years, and this was the beginning of her walk, but she was like a sponge that just sucked it all in. And she just, honestly, I can't tell you, Derek, you would have loved her beyond words, because she was she was the Catherine Coleman type who had that same kind of anointing. But we always compared her. If you ever watched Little House on the Prairie, she was Mrs. Ingalls. Combined with Barbara Stanwyck from the Big Valley. She kicked the devil's butt. She really did. She kicked the devil's butt. We said she was a woman who just really operated in the things of God, and we don't even have even our like a fingernail part of what she had. I wish we even had that. We don't have that. We wish that we had any part of what she had, but she was so into the supernatural level that we had never seen anybody like that in our entire life. Still to this day, we haven't. We're talking to Brian and Shawn Chrisagis, the Chrisagis brothers, on A View from the Bunker, the website ChrysagisBrothersMinistries.org. So, fellas, from that point, then, this was about what, the age of 7 or 8 when this happened? We were 7, and we were set free at 7 years old. The doctors all became born again after they saw the test, because they couldn't believe what they saw. And they also saw her x-rays, and they found out she had a brand new heart. I mean, a totally brand new heart. They were wanting to do surgery and give her a new heart, and God did it himself. So they had told her that she needed a transplant 7 years earlier before you were born. And how long was she with you after this healing? She stayed alive till she was 64 years old, and the amazing thing about our mother was throughout her life she traveled with Father Scanlon and Father McNutt, and miracles were taking place. But throughout her life, she did so many different miracles. But she just was an amazing woman. Our grandfather had fallen, and he had hit his head up against a cabinet, and he actually died. Okay, now what you have to understand, he believed in purgatory at the time because he was Catholic. Sure. But he fell backwards, hit his head, and he was bleeding. They called the ambulance. Our mom was not home yet, but our grandmother was running around with like a chicken with her head cut off. And our dad was here. They were all just, they called the ambulance. When the ambulance came, our mother came home with us. And when she saw that her father had died, his eyes rolled up in his head and all that stuff, and the blood had stopped. The paramedics said he was dead. 20 minutes, he was gone. And she felt in her spirit. Now, this, I would not say to do this all the time unless the Lord prompts you. And the Lord told her to raise him from the dead. And she did. She raised him from the dead. The paramedics were in shock when he came back, but he told about heaven. And he was with us for several months after that. And we just saw so many wonderful miracles, but he told her about how he walked with the Lord and how he was walking healed, that there was no sickness in heaven. He had his desire, and nobody knew this, was, you might remember the Clydesdale horses. Sure. He always wanted one. It was sitting in front of his mansion. He had everything he wanted, so he grieved for heaven. And our mom had said several months later, she said, Lord, why does he not want to stay with me? I claimed the scripture that you would give them 70 years and more if you ask for more, give them 70 more years. Right, not 70 more years, but more than 70 years. So she was standing on that scripture. And then the Lord said, well, I can't do anything. He's grieving for heaven, but I can't do anything. I made a contract. You took me at my word, which was the word of God. So you have to break the contract because I won't break it. So because of her father wanting to go back to heaven, after you see heaven, he didn't want to be here. Sure. She actually had to break the contract with the Lord and say, Lord, I give you my father. I let you take him, and I break this contract in the name of Jesus. Let your will be done. So she let him go. And honestly, on the tombstone of our grandfather, so that she would always remember this, she put his death, by his birth, his death, and then the resurrection and the death again. She had 2 deaths on this tombstone. But it was always a remembrance. And she put on there, I saw my Jesus. That was what my grandfather always wanted to say. And he kept saying, I saw my Jesus, I saw my Jesus. So it was a remembrance for us, but she lived to be 64 years old. And the amazing thing is, Derek, that she didn't die of a heart condition at all. Huh. She had 2 strokes and she got cancer. But they said for us to start, because she was a fighter, and while she was in the hospital, the doctor said, you better pray that heart stops, because everything else is shutting down, but that's the strongest heart I've ever heard. God never takes back his miracles. Now, I don't know why she had to go be with the Lord so early on in her life, but we were thrilled to know that it wasn't her heart, that the doctors kept saying that she needed a heart transplant. She got her miracle.
Wow. So we just have about 5 minutes before we'll take a quick break here. But so let's fast forward a little bit, because in the second half of our talk, I want to get into more about what you're doing today, your ministry today. What was it that led you to a life in music?
Well, when you are a miracle yourself, you really want to serve the Lord. And our brother Anthony started singing, and we would travel with him. We did a puppet show for a while on our local channel, which then got syndicated, and it was kind of like the Muppet Show, meeting Jesus. And then we became ordained ministers. And we would go out and minister, and the greatest way of ministering for us was through music. And we sang with our brother Anthony, and we started doing shows all over the area. But then it started getting bigger and bigger. And in 2000 and was it 2001 or 2002, we did a CD called "Playing with Life and Death." Just throwing it out there, never expecting it to go viral. And we put videos on YouTube, and those videos went viral, and MTV got the music videos, and they put them on their channel, and they've never, ever had Christian music on MTV.
No.
And what was amazing was we had kids listening to MTV music, and they got hooked into Christian Jesus music through us, which we were so honored. And they were homemade videos. They were not professional at all. We put them together. So it was just homemade videos that looked really good, and they were funny. And we were humorous because we were children's pastors, youth pastors, and we did puppet shows. So we always thought we wanted to be kind of like a funny combination of Christian music meeting, like Donnie and Marie or Sonny and Cher. The Monkees, they were funny in those days. Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. The music of those days, they had a sense of humor. We didn't take themselves seriously. Yeah, we never took ourselves serious, but we took the Lord serious. So that's what I think was different, and that's why MTV, I think, put us on, because they were fun videos. But and since then, we have worked with many celebrities over the years. Jennifer O'Neill from the Summer of 42 cover girl. We worked for her for 18 years, but we've known her for 30 years. Eric Estrada from Chips, Ponch, and we worked for him for 18 years, but we've known him for 30 years. And then Jessica Leah from Dallas, and Joanne Plug and Lindsay Wagner. The list goes on. We've worked with a bunch of them, but we really were personal assistants to Jennifer O'Neill, Eric, and Jessica Leah. So we had a real wonderful job of being their assistant, and they taught us everything. And it's really strange because our mom felt led to pray for these people, and one time when she felt led was Jessica Leah was jumping off a 13-story building in Munich, Germany, high on drugs and alcohol in 1979, and God told our mom to pray for this man. She had no clue who he was, and in 2001, she gets to tell him the story. He becomes like family to us, and we started working with him. We really consider him our brother, and when our mom died, he was the pallbearer, but he also performed. Actually, he got up there and spoke about her being his mother and how his mother died because she cared enough to pray him into the kingdom. So that happened with Jennifer O'Neill as well, and she turned her life around after 9 marriages and everything as well. But it was through the prayers of the righteous, and we thank God that we've learned how to pray and pray for people like that.
Well, let's talk about that when we come back from the break here. We're going to take a short break, and we'll continue our conversation with the Chrisagis brothers, Brian and Shawn Chrisagis. How difficult is it for people who appear to have everything, fame, fortune, to actually surrender to the gospel of Jesus Christ, the good news of Jesus Christ? And we'll also talk about what they've got coming, including a television series pilot. Our guests, the Chrisagis brothers. We're back in just a minute on A View from the Bunker.
Jack the Ripper's dark deeds actually began long before 1888. And it wasn't a mere man who committed the crimes, but a demon in league with devilish men, a group of men called Red Wing. Only one small group of valiant men and women stand against this evil, a group that place their faith in Christ alone, and they protect a secret of blood that Red Wing hopes to use to usher in the reign of Antichrist and the end of day.
Red Wing is called Red Wing because they want to kill the church. They want to forever stop Christ from coming back. So it's the Holy Spirit, the dove, with a murdered, has been slain, a wounded dove. Ultimately, we still have to remember that the one who is in control is God Almighty, and we have to go to Him, and we have to suit up every time we go out.
The Red Wing Saga by Sharon K. Gilbert.
Book 1.
Blood Lies.
Book 2.
Blood Rights.
Book 3.
The Blood is the Life.
Book 4.
Realms of Stone.
And coming soon, Book 5.
Realms of Fire. Available at SkyWatchTVStore.com. And paperback and Kindle at Amazon.com. Characters you'll love and a story you can't put down. The Red Wing Saga by Sharon K. Gilbert. Talking the Walk every Sunday night live at vftb.net. This is A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. Next week we talk about the Copper Scroll Project. The director of the Copper Scroll Project, Jim Barfield. He will join us, talk about what could be the greatest archaeological find in all of history. That's next Sunday night here at vftb.net. A View from the Bunker. Our guests this week, a couple of young men who are literally, I say young men, you guys look a lot younger than 51. It's not fair.
I know. Thank God we have good genes.
There's Brian.
It's also the joy of the Lord. We've been serving the Lord, and we enjoy it so much. We've had a fun life. Not to mention a great hair dye.
That's it. There you go. The Chrisagis brothers, Brian and Shawn, their website, ChrysagisBrothersMinistries.org. Don't worry about spelling it. Just check the show notes at vftb.net or wherever you're listening, and the link is there. This is one of the things that I find interesting because I had just enough of a taste of this life. And Sharon, the same way. I mean, Sharon, during her singing career, was offered the opportunity to go on tour as an opening act for George Jones. This was back in the day when George Jones was at the top of his game.
Wow.
And
that's awesome.
Something felt wrong about it, and she turned it down. And yeah, I'm grateful every day for that.
It has to be God when He turns it down, because no normal person would turn down an opportunity to do that.
Well, yeah, the guys in her band were really ticked off with her, and her family thought she was nuts, but God had a different plan for her, and and I just wake up in the morning and I go, winning, because I wound up at the winning end of that deal. But as you say, there are a lot of people who would not have been able to say no to that. I mean, my broadcast career, I went through Philadelphia and St. Louis. At the age of 25, I was on the air in Philadelphia, which was one of the 5 largest radio markets in the country at that time. So because we were a top 40 station, I was one of the 20 most listened to, for a brief period, one of the 20 most listened to voices in nighttime radio across the country. And again, it wasn't because I was that great. It's just we were doing top 40. Kids listen to the radio at night, and Philadelphia is a big city. So that's why that was true. But thank God I realized that something didn't feel right about that. And eventually he led me down the path that got me to where we are now, living here in the Ozarks, surrounded by coyotes and cattle, and loving that. But you've come into contact with some people who were at the top of the entertainment business as well, and you both are extremely talented as well, and might have taken your talents in a different path. You mentioned Jennifer O'Neill, Eric Estrada,
Jennifer O'Neill, Eric Estrada, Jessica Lee. We worked with the 3 of them, and Joanne Flug. I don't know if you remember her from Candid Camera, but these stars, they were actually looking for God. I mean, they were searching, and God puts a hunger in everybody's hearts. It's just, do they actually respond to it? Because there's so many stars looking for something that's going to satisfy, and we are involved in. We've known Jennifer for a long, long time, and she was 30-year cover girl. She's in the Smithsonian for that, being the top cover girl of all time. The Summer of 42, she's in the Smithsonian for that. So one of her big films, Rio Lobo, she just went on. She had a movie career of over 50 films, 9 marriages, 8 husbands. But the great thing about Jennifer is that she found Jesus, and the Lord used our prayers, the prayers of the righteous, to bring her to the knowledge of Jesus. But in the meantime, when we had become friends, she came in, and we hit it off right away. We were doing a puppet show for children, and Jennifer came in, and when she came in, she said the Lord showed her that we were going to be family. We started working with her, and the bond was already there because, when you start praying for somebody, it bonds you to them. I think that that's why God had us praying, because we never dreamed in 1,000 years that the same people we were praying for would be the same ones we ended up working for in a personal way. But each one of them became Christian. Jack Scalia, when he was jumping from that 13-story building in Munich, Germany, and our mom was praying for him the exact month, Jack shares his story that he heard an audible voice of the Lord speak to him, and he felt a hand pull him back from that window, and he said, turn your life over to me or jump and lose it all. And he flashed his life before him. And Jack, really, he's now working, not only has he done all the movies, and he was the George Ash model, and he was the very first male supermodel of all time. He did over, I don't know how many films, 50 films, and he was on television, so many TV series as Remington Steele, Dallas TV shows. And he worked with some of the most beautiful women in the world, Farrah Fawcett and Raquel Welch, and the list goes on. But he was still searching for Jesus, and now he's got that fulfillment in his life, and now he's working for the President of the United States, doing things for the Vietnam vets, and it's wonderful to watch them grow over the years. But to have a part of that we could actually say, hey, that's my brother and sister in the Lord, and and we became family. I mean, they really are family to us. And that's why we're doing now the women's conference with Jennifer. A couple of years ago, she had 20 years ago, she tried to do this women's conference called All That Glitters, and she started it, but it wasn't time, I guess. She traveled with Women of Faith, and she traveled with all the big ministries, Kate Arthur and all that, and Ruth Graham, and she did a lot of stuff in ministry. She's been traveling for a long time, but 2 years ago, we came to her and we said, Jennifer, we really believe that God wants us to start helping you doing the Women of, not Women of Faith, but All the Glitters conferences, and she really had a heart for that, and she said, guys, I thought the same thing, because she called us up even before that, saying, come back and work with me, and we just really didn't know where we were supposed to work with her, and we started this women's conference, and now we have people like Christina Ferrari, and she's a born-again Christian, wonderful lady, Nancy Stafford, another born-again Christian, she's a pastor's wife, and these are Hollywood actresses and models, and we're getting a bunch of them involved, Morgan Brittany, and we're trying to get Cheryl Ladd on board, and Sybil Shepherd and different ones, and they're going to speak out about that they had it all, but all that glitters is not gold, and how Jesus fulfilled them all. And we think that's an amazing thing, because you don't see Hollywood coming out talking about Jesus, but we've been able to really see that. We need to bring it down your way, because honestly, Gilbert, you would have, Derek, you would absolutely love it, Derek, because it's life-changing. It's so, because so many people have never experienced what they experience, and they look at these people as being absolutely perfect. I think you were saying that earlier, that you want to be like them. You know, but in reality, behind all that glitter, behind all, they were suffering, and some of their stories were worse than any horror film they could ever make.
Well, that's the thing that is remarkable, and sometimes that ugliness shows through. The stories that have come out over the last decade or so about Michael Jackson and what he was really like, in spite of the fact that he was the pinnacle of music 30 years ago. Michael Jackson was it. I remember we joked, that this literally 35 years ago almost now, when I was on the air in Peoria, Illinois. It seemed like every third song was was off Thriller, But when you see what that did to him, and how it did not satisfy or fulfill that void that was inside him, and how many people in Hollywood are that way. But I can attest to just the people that I knew in broadcasting, especially in top 40 radio. A lot of us were I was one of these guys, very insecure. And the fact that I could talk into a microphone, once I realized early on that, hey, there are girls who dig that. Oh, hell, okay. That's not really a healthy career choice, healthy reason for making a career choice. And I, thank God that, again, just having that little taste of it, I can kind of relate to it, but it certainly wasn't at the level of the people that you're working with. And the fact that they can bring that message to people who look at them.
Even the Christian ones. We started a concert that's called The Legends. I was
going to ask you about that.
For 4 years, and it's the legends of Christian music. And the reason we started it was because, Derek, if you think about it, if you talk about Barbra Streisand, the world hails her as great, and she's fabulous. But her legacy is just that. She's just fabulous. But the legacy doesn't change life. It doesn't give you anything spiritual to grow from. But she's got a beautiful voice. The legacy of the Christian artists have been forgotten. And when we owe a great gratitude to the ones who pioneered music, because now we're doing it. Where would we be without Russ Taff and Evie Turnquist and Sandy Patty and Phil Kagi and all these great artists that really, Scott Wesley Brown and Stephanie Busada. Stephanie Busada was one of our biggest inspirations, and she's been a sister in the Lord she's been our spiritual parent for a long time. But her and Farrell, and people have forgotten these artists, and they should be even more special because they didn't just bring you great music. They changed lives, and that legacy is it saves souls, it delivers, it sets people free and heals people. Some of their music was our bread and life is for us, because going through great, and you were in the same time period as us, so do you remember the 70s music and the 80s music of Christian music, how it was so on fire for the Lord? There was no compromise in the message.
That's the thing, though. When that was out, see, that was when I was getting into top 40 radio. So I missed all of that because I was listening to all of the top 40s. In fact, when John Schlitt came to Skywatch TV a couple of years ago. Joe Horn, and we're gonna be blessed to see him in October in San Antonio. Joe Horn was just blown away, because Joe, who's a world-class musician himself, was a huge fan of Petra back in the day, and I was like, well, who is John Oh, he was the singer for Head East. Yeah, never been any reason yet. So that was my frame of reference, sadly. And by the time I got done with music radio, I still was not walking where I am now. So I missed all of that, sadly.
You did miss, wow, because we've done it. That was our life back then. When we were kids and we couldn't go out, we were listening to their music. Our mom got on fire for the Lord. She had us listening to this music. When we finally got to school and we were made fun of, we were listening to songs like Russ Taff singing "Not Gonna Bow," all about peer pressure and how you don't bow to peer pressure. And the truth is, even when we were like kids in the bubble, allergic to everything, songs like "He Will Carry You" of Scott Wesley Brown, he carried us through everything, the Lord did, but that music gave us hope for a brighter tomorrow. And that's why we said to the artists, we brought them in and we did this Legends concert, and Scott Wesley Brown sat with us, and he said, he was in tears, and he said, guys, what you don't realize is that you have a ministry not just for the audience that loves you, the people that come to your concerts that you minister worldwide to, but also to the artists that were the ambassadors that have been forgotten and were on the front lines that got shot down. And you really have helped us once again. And that, honestly, hearing that from a general in the Lord's army brought us to tears, because there's nothing better than to see them restored to where they're supposed to be. Well, the sad thing is, Derek, if you think about it, we're the only group of people the staff are wounded, because the Christian body is, because they throw stones, they criticize, they don't restore. We're horrible. The reason you see the gay pride parades being so powerful is because they unite. When you see those women's movements, they unite. When you see anything that is successful, they unite. Why can't the Christians unite? Because we should be more powerful than any of those movements, because we got Jesus on our side. And we should really stop and think about, instead of criticizing, instead of bashing, we need to restore. Michael English is one of the greats of all time, and we love him. And he was so abused by the church that the church needs to restore these wounded warriors. And when he gets up there on the platform, the anointing of God just hits, and it hits hard, because everyone's in tears by the time it's done.
You know, Branson would be a great place to put on legend concerts if you've not done so already. In fact, I've got a guy that who may be interested in helping out with that as far as the venue is concerned. A really
we would love that. We'd love that. And Derek, we'd love for you to host it with us. That would be awesome. Because we always have a co-host with us. We had Jennifer O'Neill, we had Jeff Scalia, we know Joe Penny and Eric Estrada and Lonnie Anderson. We're trying to get them all on board to do these Legends concerts, and then we're trying to do a Legends of Hollywood event as well, because these artists, these Hollywood stars are amazing, and they have no platform to talk about Jesus. And these are what we want to do. We want to restore even the Hollywood people, because they need it. And we're really, the way we are, Derek said, we don't like being the center stage. We actually love, Joel Osteen said something one time, and it hit us so hard, because this is what we have always believed. When you're pushing somebody else up the ladder, God will always be faithful to get you where you're supposed to be. We have always loved helping others get to where God wanted them. And that's really what the body of Christ is supposed to be doing, and they're not doing it. We've never met anyone that really does that, because we don't get it.
Yeah. Well, in a sense, that's what Tom Horn is doing with SkyWatch TV. He said, this is the craziest business model ever, because he's basically encouraging Sharon and me to go out and go do this, Israel tour. Here, go publish Sharon's novels, and I'll help you get them distributed. And he's doing the same thing with Josh Peck and Christina. Awesome. So, Tom is doing that very thing with us around in the SkyWatch TV, orbit, as it were. So there are some others out there, but you're right. It's not the norm. And sadly, we in the church should be at the forefront of being that way toward one another. We're talking to Brian and Shawn Chrisagis on A View from the Bunker. Their website, ChrysagisBrothersMinistries.org. Let's talk about, and by the way, when we're done here, off air and via email, I'll share this contact with you. I think might be of some interest for, and certainly Branson is a wonderful place for this, because this is the buckle of the Bible Belt right here.
Actually, what's funny, we've talked to Dino about it already, and Kim Boyce. Oh yeah, and they've been wanting to get it out there. So George, you've got the same vision, and it must be God speaking through you, telling us it's got to be in Branson.
Well, we'll see if we can if I can at least put you in touch with somebody who can help. I'll be more than happy. But let's talk about the possibility. You guys have been working on a couple of things. You got a book coming out, The Legacy of Love, and I also want to talk about the television pilot.
Yes. Well, the television pilot, last year was one of the hardest years of our life. We lost our dad. He died. We lost, and he was such a big part of our ministry, the biggest supporter we've ever had. We had already lost our mom, our grandparents, and our dad was just the rock that kept us going. And he died, and it was all in October. And at the same time, we had a crazy woman going around claiming she was part of our ministry, and she was going into churches and knocking off churches, which sounds crazy. I had no clue what and we were getting phone calls from pastors. And then what happened was our YouTube account that had 500 videos busted into, totally deleted, and our websites from Facebook were hacked and deleted as well. So we had such attack. It was like the devil went all out against us. And we said, Lord, where are we supposed to be? Because we thought we were done. And all of a sudden, God gave us this book, and it's a legacy of love. It's our whole life story, and it talks about our 3 generations. And then what happened was we really have always desired to do a TV series like Laverne and Shirley. What people don't know about us, unless they really know us, they always think ministers are very serious. But what they don't know about us is we were born to be comics. We really were. We could see anything and make it funny. So what happened was we're doing this show with Chip Rossetti, and it's like a Laverne and Shirley, but a male version of Laverne and Shirley, and it's called Double Occupancy, and we're excited about it. He's put some great comments around us, from Tori Martin to Henry Cho, and we stuck Angela Prim in because she's one of our dearest friends. She's from Gators, and just a hoot. And then Jim Labarola will be on it as well from Home Improvement. And every week we'll have different guests that are comical or different ones, like maybe Ray Romano or Tim Allen, and they'll be coming to this hotel. But we're left this hotel by our uncle who dies, and we have to kind of put it together. And this pilot episode is hilarious. We read through it, and we just can't wait. I mean, it hooks you in for the next episode and the next episode. And we really didn't know if we could do a show like this, because we thought it's got to be really funny, because today's humor is not funny. And to us, we really want to do like the old shows, half-hour shows, sitcoms that were so funny, like Laverne and Shirley, I Love Lucy, Bob Newhart, or and Dick Van Dyke Show, and those kind of shows, because you don't see those anymore. And Mary Tyler Moore and Carol Burnett was our favorite of all time. And this really, Chip Rossetti is just amazing the way he wrote it, and he's directing it and producing it.
That's something that's needed out there, because entertainment today, especially video entertainment, television entertainment, it really portrays values that run counter to the Bible. I mean, each I guess episode wouldn't have to have an overt gospel message to it, but if it's promoting biblical values, how families should be according to His plan, God's plan, that would be a real step forward.
Well, that's what we said to Chip. We said, Chip, it doesn't even need to be Christian. We just want to bring good, wholesome family entertainment again, so the whole family can get together and not be scared to watch television anymore. We were asked by A&E several years back to do a TV pilot. It was going to be a reality show. It's called Saved by the Brothers, and we filmed the pilot, and it was after they had seen us. There was a long, I don't know how much time we have, but there was how much time do I have?
We got about 8 or 10 minutes or so.
Tell you one funny story?
Oh, sure.
Okay, I'll tell you a real quick funny story. We just do different things in our life. We were going through a hard time. We were going to do a Christmas card. Now, this is a true story. Okay, we were going to do a Christmas card and for our ministry, and I decided, I told Shawn, I said, this year I just feel really depressed. We lost our mom, we lost our grandmother. It's time for us just to have some fun so that we can laugh and stuff. So let's not do a religious card this year. I want to do something that would make people smile. So, Derek, if we ever end up on the front of a tabloid or in the news, it's never going to be me that causes the problem. It's going to be Brian, because Brian could get us into more trouble than anything. I think differently. So I went into this costume place, and I got these outfits. One was, if you ever saw The Christmas Story, do you remember that with Ralphie?
Sure.
With the BB gun? Okay, I went and got a Ralphie outfit, and the only outfit they had was the Pink Rabbit outfit. Okay, so they had the entire authentic look with their feet and everything, and I was dressed like that. Shawn's dressed as Santa Claus from the story. We have a little girl with us who's the photographer's daughter, and we had our toy line that we did at children's toy line. So we had that promoting, and then I said, you know what, we need a BB gun. I said, they're going to think I'm the Easter Bunny, so let me go get a BB gun. So we went and got a BB gun. Now, think about this, Derek. we didn't realize you do not carry BB guns at national parks or even state parks. We never thought about it because when we were kids, it was fine. We did that.
Yeah.
So we're standing there in front of this beautiful mansion at Ogilby in Wheeling, West Virginia. It's a beautiful lodge, and so we're standing there. The ranger comes over, and he realizes who we are. He says, "You're the Christakis brothers." We said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, we got a report from the sheriff's department that a deranged rabbit with a gun and Santa Claus are on the loose, and they have a hostage, the little girl." They said, "You better get in your car, get your outfits off, and get out of here because they're coming to get you." So we couldn't get the outfits off in time. We jumped in our car, and let me tell you, we were like O.J. Simpson on the freeway trying to get away, and they all surrounded us, 5 sheriff's department, 1 woman, and the woman was the worst of all of the sheriff's men. And forgive me for saying it, but I always say that her license plate was PMS 666. She was horrible. She told us to get out of the car. So I hop out as the rabbit. He gets out as Santa Claus, and we're up against the car, and they said, "Where's your weapon?" I said, "Here it is." So I pulled the gun out, and they all draw their weapons on us. And Shawn starts crying because we had a hard year, and I keep explaining, and people started videotaping this. So it ended up on YouTube, our arrest. Okay, so that's how A&E found out about us, and they put us on this reality show, which thank God we didn't do, but they wanted us to do this, and we just felt we weren't supposed to be doing it anyway. And now God rewards faithfulness, and He has got Chip Rossetti to do this TV show, and now Chip Rossetti and Mark Potts are interested. One of them wanted to do the movie of our life, which we just wrote that book, Legacy of Love, and we have Stephanie Powers interested in playing our mom's part as she gets older.
Wow!
But, so we're really honored, and we know God's got plans for what's going on. Even in the ashes of your life, when everything falls apart, He sometimes has to crush you like the olive oil that He crushes 3 times to make it perfect and shine, and that's the same people do, but that's the same way God does with His people. And the crushing is the worst thing in the world, but He does that so we could become more like Him. And we're like, Lord, are we like you yet? Because we've learned the lesson. We're dead. We're dead on everything. So we pray that God, now it's time to do what He wants us to do.
So the book Legacy of Love, when will it be available?
Actually, it's going to be out next month, and we're doing a book signing as well, but we'll be having it, it's going to be on Amazon.com. They can get it from us and many other bookstores. And there's one other thing that we need to talk about real fast. Russ Taff, who's a dear friend of ours, and he's a Grammy and Dove Award winner in Christian music. He was actually our big role model in Christian music. We loved him. He's a dear friend, and his movie comes out March 15th on DVD, but he's been so good to us that it's released by the Gaithers, and we were supposed to be in the movie, and we were interviewed. I don't know how long we were interviewed, about 15 minutes or so, about Russ. And instead of us being in the movie part, he put us as the special features. So everybody who gets this DVD will hear not our story about Russ, but our own testimony. He put that on his video, on his DVD. And we were so blessed. We cried when we found out he put our testimony on the same DVD that his testimony is on. Well, that's such an honor. I mean, to us, he was the one that influenced our life and the reason we do the music we do. In fact, we have 10 CDs out now, and we're releasing another one this year. It should be coming out very soon. So but we're just honored. And the DVD is called I Still Believe, and it's the Russ Taff story. So go get that as well.
All right. Well, fellas, I can't think of a better way to close than by featuring one of your songs, which, we get into talking, and I've enjoyed this so much, I didn't even think about, how do we work this, some of your music in here, and your manager, Linda, was kind enough to send me 3 of your songs, He Will Always Make a Way, Split Second, and Scars. And, as we close here, if you had to pick one of those 3 as a way to kind of wrap tonight, which of those 3 would you like to feature?
Well, Well, Scars says it all, but since that's really featuring me, Split Second is more with both of us, and it's a victorious song about the Lord coming back for his bride. So that's a good one. And the other one, He Will Always Make a Way, is featuring me. So the only one that really the two of us are on together is Split Second. So go for that one.
All right, we'll pick that one. It's been an honor to talk with you, fellas, and we will stay in touch because, again, I think if we can find a way to get you guys to Branson, we would really enjoy it. Sharon says hello, and she loves following you guys on Facebook. ChrysagisBrothersMinistries.org, the website. We certainly will. And, fellows, we'll have to do this again soon.
Thank you, Derek. We love you.
All right.
We love you.
Guys.
God bless you. And, we'll be praying for you.
All right. And vice versa. This is going to be an exciting year for all of us. ChrysagisBrothersMinistries.org. Brian and Shawn, the Chrisagis brothers. And we'll wrap our interview with them with the song Split Second. Brian and Shawn Chrisagis on A View from the Bunker.
Rushing to join in the flight in the final day of our Lord. Split second, we will shed mortality. Death will be swallowed up in victory. Split second, we'll embrace eternity. All the time it's gonna take. A split second. Is sworn on the glorious day of our Lord. Swiftly our bodies will change into light. The mystery with flesh and celestial unite. Explosions of splendor make the heavens ignite with the coming of our Lord. In second, we will shed mortality. Death will be swallowed up in victory. Split second, we'll embrace eternity. All the time it's gonna take. We will shed mortality. Death will be swallowed up in victory. Split second, we'll embrace eternity. All the time it's gonna take. A split second. Split second, we will shed mortality. Death will be swallowed up in victory. Split second, we'll embrace eternity. All the time it's gonna take. All the time it's gonna take. A split second, we'll embrace eternity. Split second, we'll embrace eternity. Split second.
The Chrisagis brothers, Brian and Shawn, Split Second. I'm Derek Gilbert. Coming up, our final segment. We'll talk a little bit about where we're going to be this year, as Sharon and I have got a lot planned, a lot on the calendar already for 2019, and a couple of final stories to discuss, including where the Olympics is going to go. The next Olympic Games, the newest Olympic event. You'll never guess what it is. That's ahead on A View from the Bunker.
For thousands of years, mankind has debated how creation began. Ancient texts tell us the story. But today, the real message behind the pivotal account of the Garden of Eden has been obfuscated and lost. That is, until now. World-renowned author Carl Gallups digs up the hidden truths from the book of Genesis to finally give back the knowledge that was lost to the world. Find out what really happened in the Garden of Eden, what Jesus taught about Eden on the cross, and how the conflict between Jesus and the gods of antiquity is about to erupt on planet Earth, fulfilling biblical prophecy. In the new book, Gods of Ground Zero, this explains everything.
A new take on the prophesied war of Gog and Magog. Forget about Russia coming from the uttermost parts of the north. The enemy foreseen by the prophet Ezekiel is so much bigger and so much older. It's Last Clash of the Titans by Derek P. Gilbert, a #1 new release in Amazon's Christian history category. Last Clash of the Titans breaks down step by step how Greek mythology grew out of Canaanite religion, why the old gods of the Greeks, the Titans, were the Watchers who descended on the summit of Mount Hermon, and why the Titans will return from the abyss for one final battle against God, Armageddon. Last Clash of the Titans, backed up by peer-reviewed academic research. Tom Horn calls this book stunning. Last Clash of the Titans, the second coming of Hercules, Leviathan, and the prophesied war between Jesus Christ and the gods of antiquity. Get it as part of a special offer at SkyWatchTVStore.com and available now in paperback and as a Kindle ebook at Amazon.com. It's Sunday night. That means A View from the Bunker Live. I'm Derek Gilbert. Next week, it could be the greatest archaeological discovery in history. The Copper Scroll Project. Director Jim Barfield joins us here on A View from the Bunker Live. That begins at 7 p.m. Central Time. That's UTC-6, and it streams live at vftb.net. Well, a lot going on in the world yet. I got to kind of strike that phrase from my mind, don't I? I've used that like 3 weeks in a row. Anyway, the Olympic Games, promising a new event. They try to come up with new events to make things more interesting every 4 years. But I think the Olympics, we can officially say, has jumped the shark. I think it's safe to say the Olympics, after, what is it? How many thousands a year? A couple thousand years ago that the Greeks invented this, and then restored, over 100 years ago by a Frenchman, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, the modern games, I think, have officially jumped the shark, as it has been announced that one of the new games to be included in the next Olympics, the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris, along with surfing and sport climbing, skateboarding, okay. But breakdancing is the other new event expected to be added in the 2024 Olympics. Breakdancing. I didn't know that breakdancing was still a thing, because I remember that being a big deal when I was, doing Top 40 radio. That was 35 years ago. So, the people who were breakdancing then now don't do that kind of dancing because it would be, literal. You try it and you break something. But the official organizing committee has, in Paris, has submitted that to the official International Olympics Committee, and the IOC says it is expected to be one of the 4 new events, that plus surfing, sport climbing, and skateboarding for the 2024 Paris Olympics. What a world. What a world. One of the problems with new technology being used at airports, used by government law enforcement agencies, government agencies that track travelers coming in and out of airports, facial recognition software. Kind of a big deal. In fact, the new iPad Pro that Sharon and I both invested in for ourselves, kind of a laptop replacement, really, has replaced the thumbprint or fingerprint security system that the previous generation of Apple devices had. So I've got a couple of iPads now. One that essentially is going to be the camera for our documentary or travelogumentary as we go to Israel in May. That one is keyed to a couple of my fingerprints. So I put my finger on the little button there, and it says, okay, you're you, and you can get into the system. The new iPad Pro has as an option facial recognition software. Facial recognition. Have it recognize your face, and that's how you unlock the iPad. That makes me uncomfortable. I've not done it. I've gone back to the old way of tapping in a code because I don't like having that stored. Because when you back up the iPad to the iCloud, in order, if the device is ever it needs to be reset or you need to transfer it to another device, you got to have all that information stored somewhere in the cloud, which means that the facial recognition pattern, the biometric data, would be stored somewhere in the cloud. Apple would have it, and no doubt everyone else would have it too. So I decided not to do that. But one of the problems that tech experts are talking about is this facial recognition software. The biometric algorithms are having trouble with people who identify as transgender. And again, this is one of those problems you don't think you'd ever have to actually figure out a solution to. But apparently, facial recognition software used for security, to verify that travelers really are who they say they are, that the passport that is being presented is actually got the picture of the person who's giving it to you, has trouble recognizing people who identify as a gender other than what they are. This is how far our society has come. We are so advanced, our minds are so open in this 21st century that our brains are falling out. Facial recognition software struggling to identify transgender and non-binary people. Who'd have thought? Speaking of technology and first world problems, apparently the new sneakers put out by Nike, the self-lacing sneakers, causing a problem because they actually come with apps now. This is a $300 pair of Nike software, or Nike, sneakers, but there's software that goes with the sneakers because you can adjust the tension on the shoes. Essentially, they lace themselves, but you can control the tension on the laces with an app. An Android app or iOS app, and apparently Android phones aren't playing well with the Nike sneakers. This should not be a problem. I mean, being able to lace your sneakers, that should not be an issue when you're paying over $300 for a pair of kicks. Okay? Now, the iOS app doesn't appear to have problems, but with the Android app, for some reason, there was a problem with the firmware update. Actually, I think the firmware update was with the shoes. Updating the firmware on your shoes. Oh, no. The update bricked my shoes. And now I can't get them closed. This is so ridiculous. I've only recently gotten to a point where I can, justify to myself paying more than like $35 for a pair of shoes. But, you get to a certain age and you realize if your feet aren't comfortable, you're going to have a lousy day. And so it's worth getting a good pair of shoes if you can afford it. But paying $350 for a pair of shoes just so you have self-lacing sneakers is just ridiculous. Again, first world problems. And here's the additional thing. What if somebody, hacks those? Anything that's connected to the web or anything that's got a Bluetooth transceiver in it, which these shoes apparently do, otherwise you wouldn't be able to control your laces with your smartphone, can be hacked. So just imagine that, some guy running down the court in a basketball game and some hacker in the stadium somewhere decides to have some fun with this guy and, over-tightens the laces or causes, a blowout or something, or causes them to fall off. It's absolutely ludicrous. There's some places technology just should not go, and self-lacing sneakers is one of those. Technology, though, entering into the UFO Museum and Research Center in Roswell, New Mexico. Sharon and I were there along with Josh Peck a couple of years back when we went there for the 70th anniversary. This was back in 2017 for the 70th anniversary of the Roswell crash. The UFO Museum and Research Center, kind of low-tech, but they are planning an upgrade. Our friend Guy Malone, who is our missionary to Roswell, tells us that this is being redesigned so that the exhibits will be more interactive. It was kind of funny going into the UFO Museum and Research Center and seeing a number of books by Tom Horn and Steve Quayle on the shelves. L.A. Marzulli. Because I know for a fact that they were not expressing the worldview of the people, most of the people who were in Roswell looking for answers to the big questions of life, namely, where do we come from, why are we here, and what happens when we die? In other words, the questions that we as Christians should answer from the Bible. But thank God at least there was some truth on the shelves there at the UFO Museum and Research Center. It struck me as being an awful lot like a local library branch with a few displays that showed off some of the legends connected to the UFO phenomenon. But apparently they're going to go more high-tech and make it more of an interactive thing going forward. Stuff like that is why Josh and I wrote the book, The Day the Earth Stands Still. So, as I mentioned, Sharon and I both with new books coming out later this year. Sharon's new novel should be available by the time we get down to Dallas in the end of March 29th through the 31st. It's the Hear the Watchman conference. Just posted an interview this weekend with Jeannie Moore of Hear the Watchman about a couple of the new speakers at the conference. That will include Irvin Baxter of End Time Ministries and Gary Wayne, author of The Genesis 6 Conspiracy. In addition to L.A. Marzulli, Russ Dizdar, Pastor Carl Gallups, and Rabbi Zev Porat, Pastor Paul Begley, Dr. Michael Lake, Casper McLeod, Coach Dave, and more. Gary Havener will be there. So a wonderful gathering, and we hope that if you're in the area that you can join us there, and we can save you $20 on the registration if that's fits in your schedule, fits in your budget. Use the promo code Gilbert20 when you go to hearthewatchman.com to check out hearthewatchman.com, and that's at the Hilton DFW Lakes Conference Center in Grapevine, Texas. Again, March 29th through 31st. You get there on the 28th for early registration, and we'll be hanging around the lobby probably. But just a wonderful gathering. Sharon is going to be the keynote speaker for the Lunch with the Speakers. So if you opt for that little upgrade, Lunch with the Speakers, you'll get a chance to hear from Sharon. She'll be talking about Ephesians 6, the whole armor of God. And in fact, that's going to be a big part of my talk as well. We're going to kind of overlap somewhat. My talk, more preaching than teaching this time. There'll be a little bit of that in there, but more preaching than teaching. Just feel led to talk about it. In fact, it was something that came up during the conversation with Brian and Shawn Chrisagis about how we Christians tend to shoot our wounded. And I think that relates to how we approach the spiritual war in which we're deployed. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, and yet we keep attacking the humans around us, many of whom are professing brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ. That kind of ran into that this week just a little bit. I had posted a link to an article about the work of the archaeologists from Trinity Southwest University at the site in Jordan near Mount Nebo, which we will see, by the way, on our tour of Israel in May, a site called Tal El Hammam. Tal is just the Arabic version of Tel. It's like a mound where civilizations, build on top of layers of civilizations. And Dr. Stephen Collins has been leading the team there for 14 seasons now. They're just finishing up their 14th season digging at this site. But last November, the science director for the dig, Dr. Philip Sylvia, who was a guest on this program just a few weeks ago, presented a paper for the American Schools of Oriental Research and showed scientific evidence that is consistent with a massive destruction event about the time of Abraham, 1700 BC, give or take 50 years. That's based on carbon dating. But the physical evidence that the buildings at this site were all blown over in the same direction, which means it wasn't an earthquake where, the mud bricks would have scattered, cracked, shattered, and scattered in all directions. They were all blown in the same direction, like an explosion. What would have exploded in 1700 BC? And also evidence of a superheating event. In other words, pieces of pottery that were like flash heated on one side. What would have caused that? Well, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And I'm not going to name names because I really don't want to make this a personal thing. And I'm not saying, woe is me or poor me, because that's not it at all. It's just, something that comes to mind as an example of something that really is not core Christian doctrine. And there are many scholars who think that Dr. Collins is wrong about his, and scholars whose work I respect, who think that he's just way off target. Now, I think Dr. Collins, Dr. Sylvia make a convincing case. In fact, I included references to their work in my forthcoming book because I think it's really intriguing. And if you listen to the interview with Dr. Sylvia, you heard a little bit of that as I talked to him, asked him questions about the dolmens, which are the megalithic funerary monuments that are clustered up and down the Jordan River Valley on the east side of the Jordan River. Why is that interesting? Because that's where the Bible tells us the Rephaim tribes lived in the days of Abraham. And archaeologists who've looked at these dolmens, which are made in sort of a trilithon form. You've got two big slabs of stone standing upright and then a tabletop slab across the top. Sometimes they've got, slabs closing in the ends, but sometimes it's just those three slabs. That's the basic construction of these. They date back to the beginning of the Bronze Age, around 3000 BC. The newest ones date to about 1800 BC, just before Abraham, or about the time of Abraham. And the Bible tells us that kings from the east, Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, and his allies came from the east to do battle against the king of Sodom. Well, this site, Tal El Hammam, was one of the largest sites in the Levant. That's modern-day Jordan, Israel, Lebanon, Syria. The only one bigger was Hazor or Hatzor in northern Israel, just west of the Sea of Galilee. So Sodom was a very important place in the time, this Tal El Hammam. It had to be for these kings to come all the way from Elam, which is Iran. That's like a 3-month march. You really got to be motivated to march an army that far to do battle against this city. But on the way, they fought against the Rephaim tribes along the east side of the Jordan River Valley, where these dolmens are located. Well, Dr. Sylvia said, there were like 1,500 of them around this site that they believe was Sodom, and I agree. There are 500 of them still standing. It's the largest cluster of dolmens in the Levant. And bear in mind, the cluster of dolmens, the number of dolmens up and down the Jordan River Valley is the highest concentration of those sites in the world. I mean, you find them all over. You find them in the UK, you find them in Korea, you find them in modern-day Caucasus Mountains, Georgia, Armenia. But there are more of them along the Jordan River, from the Dead Sea up to the Golan Heights, than anywhere else in the world. Exactly where the Bible puts the Rephaim. And according to Dr. Sylvia, the 500 that they found, when I asked him, how are they aligned? Are they aligned according to the stars? Astronomical alignment? He said, no, they appear to be aligned toward what we think is the temple of Sodom. Now, which god was worshipped there? We don't know. But we know that 400 years later, when Moses and the Israelites came along, they were eating sacrifices offered to the dead. Baal Peor, probably lord of the opening to the underworld. So some fascinating stuff there. But this is one of those arguments. The location of Sodom, the location of Ai, which another group of archaeologists believe this week that they've discovered. Guys can get really angry about stuff like that and almost make it a test of orthodoxy. So, let's stop shooting each other over things like that. because we've got plenty of enemies outside the camp. We shouldn't be turning our guns inward. So, as I mentioned, that's one of the sites that we will see. If you take the Jordan extension on the Israel tour in May, we'll be there from May 12th through the 23rd, and then over in Jordan from the 23rd through the 27th. And when we climb Mount Nebo, this site, Tal El Hammam, the biblical Sodom, is only about 6-7 miles from there. And you can see it from there because you get a great view from Mount Nebo. See across the Jordan River to Jericho, and if it's really clear, you can see as far as Jerusalem. So you'll see the Dead Sea from there. You'll see the site of biblical Sodom, and then we'll go to Petra, and we got some stuff to talk about Petra, which I didn't leave myself enough time tonight to really talk about, but it's in the forthcoming book. And then Sharon and I are planning on writing a book about Petra next year, so we've got some stuff to discuss. But anyway, some fascinating stuff, and there's still some room on the second bus. Carl Gallups and Zev Porat will be with us, and we'll be teaching and preaching all along the way. Some other interesting sites that we'll see in Israel include Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, the mountains of blessing and curse. The mountains of curses and blessing, where Joshua took the Israelites and set up his altar right after destroying Jericho, and Ai went north to Shechem, which is these mountains on either side of modern Nablus, which is a Palestinian city. But we're going there. We will see Joshua's altar on Mount Ebal. We will see the site of the fortress of the Canaanite general Sisera, who was probably from Sardinia, because the architecture of the buildings there is very much like what we saw on Sardinia with True Legends Group last May. So we'll see that. We'll go to, of course, the Jordan River and baptize in the Jordan River. We'll be on the Sea of Galilee. We're going to visit the Temple Institute, too, and see and hear from them directly what their plans are for the Third Temple. So we're looking forward to that. Information, you can follow the link at vftb.net to lipkintours.com. That's lipkintours.com. And this will be a tour like no other. So please don't miss it. The SkyWatch TV First Annual Defender Conference sold out August 2nd through 4th, but we've got information on the streaming video coming this week. And it's the same group that does the streaming video for Hear the Watchmen. So if you've watched any of their videos, or watched their conferences via streaming video, that this is going to come off, well, without a hitch. Tom Horn, Mike Heiser, Carl Gallups, Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis, Dr. Michael Lake, Joel Richardson, Jim Barfield, Shelley Neese, connected to the Copper Scroll Project, and more. Of course, Sharon, me, Josh Peck, Stephen Bankars, and others. So we'll have the information up there on the streaming video coming very, very soon. The True Legends Conference, September 13th through the 15th. Their theme this year is Answering the Alien Question. This will be back at the Mansion Theater in Branson. I'm honored to be serving as the Master of Ceremonies again. Steve Quayle, Timothy Alberino, Richard Dolan, Dr. Hugo de Garis, L.A. Marzulli, and more. For information on that conference, go to gen6.com, GENSIX.com. And there's another conference that Sharon and I haven't talked much about, but this one is shaping up to be just an incredible lineup. This is the Unsealed Scroll Prophecy Conference, the Unsealed Scroll Prophecy Conference in San Antonio, October 4th through 6th at the Grand Hyatt in San Antonio. This is down on the Riverwalk. L.A. Marzulli, Bill Salas, Jonathan Kahn, Pastor Billy Crone, and Jim Barfield of the Copper Scroll Project. He will be there as well. And I understand that as of yesterday that Paul McGuire has also signed on. So Paul will be there as well. For information on that conference and to get in on an early bird discount rate, go to unsealedscroll.org. That's unsealedscroll.org. And promo code Gilbert20. The promo code Gilbert20 works. That'll get you 20% off the registration on that conference as well. So a lot coming up during the year, and we are just praying for God's leading in all of this. Sharon and I have got a couple of writing projects that we plan to work on together, and we are looking forward to that. This will be the first nonfiction. Well, this will be our first writing project together, actually. We're going to get started on that very, very soon. Hope to have it out for the fall. Working title, Profiling the Dead. As we've done the research for our books, we found that the cult of the dead in the ancient world Hebrew prophets knew about it. Their neighbors were venerating the dead, and it really is reflected in the Bible. It's just we've not been taught it. So that is something to look forward to toward the end of 2019, God willing. Well, we appreciate you bringing us into your ears tonight. Please leave us a review at Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or wherever else fine podcasts are sold. Give us a like at Facebook. That's our Facebook page there, facebook.com/viewfromthebunker. And we remind you that A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Our opening theme is by Kevin MacLeod. It's called Iron Bacon, and his website is www.incompetech.com. Our opening announcer, DC Good. Next week, we talk about the Copper Scroll and what it points to, which could be, and I don't exaggerate, the greatest archaeological find in all of history. Jim Barfield, director of the Copper Scroll Project, joins us here. That's next Sunday night starting at 7 p.m. Central Time, UTC-6 at vftb.net. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.